I think let's get started.
Mhm.
And I'm going to share my slide. All right. So thank you for being with us today. We are excited that we got to launch eventPERCH. It has been something that I think, honestly, I first started thinking about eventPERCH 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And I was doing an event and the week of the event, it was in November, sort of right after the time had changed, and my bride did not want to do a first look. And I said to her, you know what? You don't have to do it, but the reality is your ceremony is at 4 o'clock and the sun is going to go down at 4:30 and you will get no pictures. And she said, no, 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 I really don't want to do it. So I sent all my timelines out, and I don't know about you all, but I was doing them in Word and I was editing them into sort of smaller pieces so that transportation only got what they needed, and hair and makeup only got what they needed. And because by that point I'd already been doing this for 10 years, and I knew that the less information you give people, the better off you are, the more compliant you are. So I was editing away, and she said, well, no, so she's sitting in my office and she looks out the window and she goes, oh my God, it is so dark outside. I'm like, yeah, we've had that
Just say I
conversation.
told you so, but
Just like, oh my God, you're such a great planner. You're so right.
you're a genius.
You're a genius. It's amazing. And I said, thank you. And she said, you're right. I will do a first look. And I'm like, great, because like we're 3 days out and now I got to go change 10 timelines by hand manually. And my number two at the time, which was not Dawson,
Not
because
me.
he was in
Like
elementary school.
kindergarten.
Exactly. And just tragic and amazing. And so I went in, I changed five. My number two at the time changed five. And I'm standing there at the event and I am looking at the escort table, and Rick, the videographer, comes in and I'm like, Rick, why are you here? You should be at the first look. And I will never forget, he like literally takes the piece of paper and he goes, not on my timeline, no first look. And I was like, there has got to be a way that we can build something where human error does not cause this. And that was the beginning of eventPERCH. We actually built it in something called FileMaker, which is a database program, but that's where this whole thing started. So we've been working on this for 20 years.
Mhm.
We built it a couple of years ago, and so thus it is here. So let me do a little housekeeping. Every other Wednesday, we do one of these introductory meetings just to get people educated about what eventPERCH is and is not, just to kind of understand the basics and really to hear why we can't live without it.
Right.
And then every every other Wednesday, we do an introductory webinar. And then every Wednesday at 12 o'clock, we just wrapped our office hours and we meet the nicest people.
Yep.
It's so fun.
It's the best.
And we get together and we workshop. Sometimes we have a lot of people, sometimes we have very few people, and we workshop whatever it is somebody is getting stuck on. So this is, it's live. We are here to remove any of the roadblocks that you've got, and basically just sort of learn from the community what you're needing, and it's constantly evolving.
Totally. And office hours, just to point out, is if you are in trial or if you are a paying customer. So it's for if you're if you're invested.
Right.
Exactly.
Good point.
Then we are invested in you.
Exactly. So basically, we want to highlight what it is, eventPERCH is. We have had a lot of conversations with a lot of planners, and it is interesting that, we built, as I said, this whole system originally in a database. And then when we went to build it to share with other people, because Marcy Bloom literally would not stop saying to me, when can I get your software? We built it, we were starting to build it in a different way, and we were talking to so many people. We really honed in on what really the pain points of other planners were, and they are timelines, budgets, and payment schedules. And we were going to do timeline budgets. We're going to do guest lists instead of payment schedules. And we did backtrack that. So that was really, and
and now we couldn't live without our payment schedules. I mean, I think
yes,
we
yes.
backtracked guest lists, input payment schedules, and
Yep.
no regrets.
Exactly. And Ryder will walk you through a couple of these things afterwards, just to give you a little view under the hood. So, all right. So Timelines, as we said, what is so brilliant about them is that literally with a click of a button, you can create timelines that are just for your bride, just for your groom, just for your transportation company, hair and makeup, caterer, logistics. And that's all done by this simple tagging system. So you go in and for each line that you have in your timeline, you get to code who needs that information. So when you say, may I have my bride's timeline? Only the things that your bride that you have tagged for your bride. So she's not seeing at any time. She never has to see when those restroom trailers are coming. And then the budgets are brilliant because they take us away from spreadsheets. And we were talking to somebody last week, and she was sharing, sadly, the story that she said, I'm so happy to have eventPERCH because, before I was using eventPERCH, I was doing a budget and I had, as we
In
all
Excel,
do, and
yeah.
everything in Excel, and she was on a percentage basis and it was 20%, and lighting, which was expensive, which was a $70,000 lighting item, she hadn't calculated into the total. So the problem with that is we feel that if you don't include every single line item, not only does it screw you because your 20% is not on $70,000. So literally think about that. She lost 20% of $70,000, which is so hard. But also it erodes
Trust. I
trust.
mean, more importantly, she
Yeah.
lost client
Right.
trust.
Trust.
I mean,
Right.
because then that is just disruptive for the whole thing.
Exactly. And then payment schedule.
And,
Give us the highlight.
so highlight of payment schedules, the gift that keeps on giving. Whenever you update your budgets, your payment schedules automatically update. So back in the day, we've been working in FileMaker, which was the precursor to eventPERCH, and all of our budgets were built in a system basically very similar where you can't make mistakes. It minimizes the room for human error. But the payment schedules we were doing in Excel. And the problem would be is that you would update your budgets and then your payment schedules
Yeah,
are
they were not connected, right?
but they don't talk to one another.
Right.
And so
And God forbid your client should ever go look at the payment
oh my
schedule.
God. Exactly. So this allows you to just honestly streamline your operations and never miss payments because there's a calendar integration.
Right.
It will also flag,
including your own.
Yep, it will also
Right.
including your own. It will also.
That's happened a lot.
No, I
in the
know.
past.
We built that calendar integration and so fast. But will also flag if you have any unassigned line items in your budget. So it's always going to alert you if you have money just floating around that's not assigned to a specific vendor. So anyway, that's the high level.
Exactly.
It's the best.
What is it? What are we not doing? We walk through it.
Yeah.
What we're not doing.
So basically, we like to say that our roadmap is shaped by you. So things that we are working on that we've already gotten feedback about it's in our wish list of things that we're tackling is checklists and task lists. So that is like team assignments. Think of it as each line item you have on the timeline or each line item you have on the budget. I could say, Lynn is assigned to this line item, or I could drop a little note that says, will you update this budget to reflect the invoice that came in on this date? And you can, check things off. Team assignments is more so when you're on site. We understand the importance of you're going through your complete timeline, who on the team is in charge of specific line items outside of the vendors, obviously, that are in charge. So it will be visible on your exports. Lynn is in charge of cutting the cake. Dawson.
Yes, right. I hope not.
Dawson is in charge of making sure that the shuttle signage goes on. Yeah. The shuttle signage makes it on the shuttles, things of that nature. Guest lists are forthcoming. That was our replacement for payment schedules, but we understand the importance of them, so that's coming down the pipeline. But really, what we're doing now is perfecting our core features. So super robust, advanced tools when you get into the nitty-gritty of timelines, budgets, and payment schedules before we expand further.
And I think this is a good point to say that one of the things, eventPERCH was built by event planners for event planners. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of the other products that are out there did not come from that well.
This is
field experience. Exactly. And we built I think the very best timelines, the very best budgets, and the very best payment schedules out there. And I think that we were talking this morning in office hours, and someone said, "What do you use for tasks?" And we said we use Basecamp, which is a very robust um, system to be able to share tasks, and we use it all the way
Internally, yeah.
internally and with our clients, and it really is, and it's I don't know, I was surprised how inexpensive it was. And so we believe that you should use the best tools that are out there, and that a lot of these bigger platforms are encompassing lightly lots of different things, and we took a very different approach. We're
Totally.
doing
Yeah.
the things that we know are really critical to our and your success. We're focusing on those first, and then we'll branch out.
Slowly start to
Yes,
expand.
exactly. Um, oops, what
Oh.
am I doing? There you go. Thank you.
Bless.
We're having a perch party. And our perch party is going to be hopefully early in the new year.
Yeah.
And we'll basically get together. We're going to, it means
Workshop
we're going to
things.
do it in Charleston, and it'll be for active users. And we'll workshop and community. And it's one of the things that I loved about T, or the Eastern Education, is that we had a really robust community.
Yeah.
And it's we just realized how much there was, how much we got from each other because of it.
Right.
So that'll happen. And
that might.
All right, so let's see. What do we always say?
We'd quit with that.
Absolutely, and we honestly mean it.
We'd have to retire.
Yes,
I mean,
I would definitely retire. You can't retire, but I would retire.
No, I would literally be fired if eventPERCH didn't exist, because it is that good. I'm not that smart. The system is smart.
Yeah, the system is really smart. Yes.
It just allows you to not make mistakes.
Again, this information that is targeted for exactly, when you give your bride only what she needs to be doing, and it's a 2.5-page timeline. When we did that big wedding in October, we had a 33-page timeline, it was good times. But the bride only got about 4 pages of it. And as anything changed, anything that affected her, got changed and updated.
Right. And same with our creative partners too. Every day we would filter a new timeline, because things were constantly evolving, a new timeline just for that day. And then the next day would come around and be just the photo video timeline just for that day. Not that they didn't get the comprehensive one that spanned across all weekends in advance, but every day we're sending them, here's what you need to do today.
And that was, we had Jose on that job, and it was such a complex job, and it was so great that every day he would write us every morning. He was like, you're not giving him, just so you be sure we're clear on this. Like, let's say if he was starting to shoot on Thursday and now it's Saturday, you're not giving him Thursday's schedule again and Fridays. You say Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. Good morning, Jose. Here's your new timeline for today. And he's like, this is like a dream. And part of why we love this stuff is because big, bold statement Lynn's going to make. We have never met a venue who hasn't said, I don't know anyone who has better paperwork than you all do.
Music to our ears.
And this is what eventPERCH does. So not only does it, literally your clients are like, oh my God, these timelines are insane. But also the venues are like, wow, the way this is thought through, that I'm getting a timeline that just says catering at the top, and you're not giving me hair and makeup or trucking or anything I don't need to know. So and listen, we all know that venues are sending you clients, and impressing venues is a critical part of our job. Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
So it also, for the math, we already touched on, no broken formulas that make you really look bad, that could leave money on the table.
Totally. I think also, from a team collaboration perspective too, like if you have a new team member, the system again protects you from yourself. So if you have a team member who's like, you can't have somebody who accidentally breaks a formula, because like you would never break a formula, but so it allows. But basically, it just builds team trust, because you can't go in and disrupt anything. If that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can't and templates is something we'll talk about later, but that's also game changing. And sequences, and
it's everything. I mean, the whole sequences. Oh, we didn't actually really touch on sequences. Ryder we'll do it. Yeah. We'll show you. But the concept is, because we didn't talk about it, right? The concept is that I don't know how people live without this. This is why I quit. But yesterday the father of the bride, he had told us, 4 weeks ago that he wanted to talk for 5 minutes. And he came back in yesterday and he said, actually, I want to talk. My speech is 17 minutes. And we're like,
Oh,
oh, okay.
wow.
And so when you go into eventPERCH and you change that speech from 5 to 17 minutes, everything else sequences and changes with it.
That you
So
have
that you
assigned
have
to a
assigned to be
sequence.
together, because as we all know, these things are sequential. Like when one thing happened, it knocks into the next, and knocks into that. Sometimes the things aren't sequential, and then obviously you wouldn't tag them. But this, and I just sat there yesterday thinking, how long would it take us to make that whole, to change everything there for about, anyway,
Yeah,
longer than you want.
longer than you want. And I think that.
All right, so that's the platform. So we are going to turn this over to Ryder, and I'm going to let him jump in, and he's going to kind of walk you through some of the highlights, and we will see you on the other side. How about that? Hi, Ryder.
But without further ado, I'll jump into a screen share and show you a bit of the cool features that Dawson and Lynn were just referring to and how they can change the game and take your planning business to new heights. So let me share eventPERCH. So firstly, I just wanted to start with a quick navigation overview. Eden, you may be more familiar since you do have an active subscription. And I will keep it simple on the front end side of things. So as far as navigation, the main bread and butter is all on this projects tab that we'll get into in just a moment, where each project is like your wedding week with a single client that's made up of multiple events. So in that wedding week for Aspen, we might have a wedding ceremony, the rehearsal dinner, the after party, and the farewell brunch are all events inside of that project. And we'll dive into projects in just a moment. Moving down the list here on the left, the next tab is our vendor database. One of the amazing things about eventPERCH is it's designed to really save you time and keep things simple. So rather than going to this accounts tab and building out all of your vendors when you first join, you can actually add vendors and contacts on the fly right from your timelines and budgets, which I will show you in just a moment. So don't worry too much about the accounts tab and just as you need a vendor or a contact, add them directly in your timeline and budget, and they'll save back to this database. And if you ever need to edit a vendor or their contact or a client, you can come in and use the three dots to edit one of those accounts. And then the next tab is the templates tab. And templates, again, are similar to the vendor database where you don't really need to be in this templates tab very often. You'll be able to save new templates from inside timelines and budgets. And then in future projects, you can reload those existing templates to quickly start entire projects with multiple events, to reuse timelines and budgets from the same venue that you might return to often. And then we have some cool built-in find and replace features and some advanced tools to really speed up converting those templates into your new events. So very simple on the left-hand side. And again, really focusing on projects as your main bucket where you work. And then down at the bottom, I just wanted to highlight this little question mark. You can access our knowledge base, which will open a separate link to our help center. And you also, in the bottom right, you have our support widget here. And that is our best friend that we have named Pip. Pip is the AI agent that's built into eventPERCH. And you can come in and ask Pip any questions you have about using eventPERCH or some questions about wedding planning. Pip will use all the information that it has in its database to respond to you. And if any elaboration is needed, myself, Ryder, or Jessica will jump in and answer any questions you have. So definitely make sure to utilize the messages, and also the help icon on the bottom right is a quick access to our whole knowledge base as well. And then settings in the bottom left, before we dive into projects, is where your workspace information lives. You can update your username and password under My Account. In your workspace settings, you definitely want to build out your company logo and your company website, Instagram handle. The way to think of your workspace is that once you create your eventPERCH workspace, the admin, one person creates the workspace and then can come into settings and invite other team members to collaborate. And when you create your company, you become a vendor inside of eventPERCH as the planning company that can then be assigned to timeline items and budget items and track your management fee payments and reimbursements. So make sure to update your workspace settings, invite your team members. Customization, you should check out before you really kick off with timelines and budgets. That is where you can define your tags and categories. We have defined a core set of Easton tags and categories for timelines and budgets. You're welcome to edit these, add new ones, change the names for however your company likes to operate. And we'll show you a little bit more on that down the line. And then plans and billing are where you'll enter your payment method. And we do start every account in your free trial with our sort of maximum unlimited elite tier. And if you'd like to, before your trial ends, change your tier to a different option, we have plans starting at just $30 a month. You can go to plans and billing and add your payment method and then click update subscription to view those. So that is the high level navigation, and I would love to dive into some projects and events to show you around. Make sure if you have any questions, I know we are a smaller group today, but feel free to drop in any questions to the chat and we can review them at the end if we have time for Q&A, or we'll follow up with you as well. So projects, what I'd like to really keep today's session high level, and then if you can, Lisa, if you'd like an extension, and Eden, make sure to join our office hours next week, as Lynn said, on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. And we can really dive into questions, workshop live, and make sure that you really get a deep dive into every feature that we offer. So firstly, as I said, a project like Chatham, Maine might be our wedding week in Chatham, and that's made up of several events. I'm going to open this project, and each project that when you create a new project, you can create it with a single event or multiple events inside that project. And you click this little button to add an event like a rehearsal dinner, for example. And the key is that eventPERCH allows you to build out a group of events, and each event, for example, timeline might have a setup day, the event day, and a breakdown day. And then eventPERCH really lets you drill into an individual event and all of the details inside of just the wedding or just the rehearsal dinner. Or it also lets you view those at the project level so that you can see an overlapping timeline of all of your wedding setup days, event days, and breakdown days overlapping with your rehearsal dinner days, where your teams are and where your vendors are across that entire wedding week. So this project level is your high level overview, which combines all of your event details in one place, or you can drill down to an individual timeline, budget, or payment schedule at the event level. So you can see when I create an event, it will automatically, every event will automatically start with a timeline, budget, a vendor contact list, your company payout, which is for your management fees and reimbursements, and all of your vendors with their invoices and their payment schedules. And you can see that mirrored on the project level. And depending on what stage you're in, you can obviously view that high level and export all of the details at once for the wedding week, or drill down by clicking into any of these items. So before we dive into the beauty that Dawson Lynn described on timelines and budgets, I just wanted to highlight on this project overview page, this is where you will select how you charge your management fees. So you can either charge a total project management fee or a per event management fee. And you can always see a recap of your project financials here on the right side. I'm going to jump over to a completed project with several events so you can see how we would build these out. So inside of one project or wedding week, we might have 6 or 7 different events depending on what is going on. Events can be happening on the same day, like the wedding and the after party. And when you click on your project budget or project timeline, you see the entirety of all of the days for that project, all of the events, whether it's for the wedding or the welcome party or the rehearsal dinner, all in this event column. And then you can also drill down into an individual event, which I would like to show you now for the timelines to start. So going back to our Chatham wedding week, if we're in the wedding timeline here, I just wanted to point out one of the things that really is beneficial about eventPERCH is just how every page is not only simple and elegant, but also designed very similarly. So when you get familiar with the buttons like filters and exports and the three dot menus for your advanced features, those will be the same options you have across timelines and budgets and payment schedules. So before we really dive into how it all works, I just wanted to showcase kind of the end result when you build out a timeline, what you get. So if I have this, as Lynn and Dawson said, a 30-page timeline, and it has a ton of vendors and tags and locations throughout it, we use the vendor column to define who's responsible for that item. And a lot of times it's who is getting paid to do that item. But the tag column is who else needs to know about that. So once you have your tags defined and your timeline built, I can come into filters and I can say, filter a timeline for the tag is venue. So anything that venues need to know about, you can see when I filter for that tag, it has various vendors, but the venue needs to know when the tent company is arriving. The venue needs to know, when the lighting company is going to be installing things, how to let people in, let people out. And I can stack my filters to say, I want to have a venue timeline. I want to select only for the venue, Chatham Bars Inn. And I want to say it's only for the day of the wedding, which is Saturday. Now, with just 3 clicks, eventPERCH has created a stakeholder timeline for the Chatham Bars Inn venue and only the hits on the timeline that they need to know about on the wedding day. I can go to my export and I can say this is a CBI wedding day timeline. And I can confirm that export. Take a moment to load, and then you'll get a beautiful PDF that has your branded logo at the top. It has a customized name that you've defined. It'll even show the filters that you have set. So the venue tag, Chatham Bars Inn location, and the event date. And then you get a clean timeline to share with the Chatham Bars Inn team so they can see only the hits that they have to focus on the wedding day, which, as Lynn and Dawson said, is game changing when it comes to having people actually execute on the day of, only seeing what they need to see and not being distracted by other line items. So that's really the beauty behind the tagging system and the filter system. And these robust filters, robust stackable filters, are also available in your budgets and your payment schedules, which I'll show you in just a moment. Some other cool features with the timeline and really across the board. As Lynn said, I want to show you those sequences where you can interconnect items and change things on the fly. So you do have the option to highlight any text and change the formatting. You can press shift and enter or shift and return to create new line items inside your descriptions. You can use this little notes button to add notes, and you can choose when you export to either include notes or not include the notes. And then you also have the 3 dots menu for each line item, giving you some additional features like the flagging features to highlight any items that are TBD or need to be updated, or you can move items from day to day across your timeline. Again, as I mentioned, you can have multiple days. So the wedding timeline, you have the wedding day is actually on Saturday, but if if you have a robust setup like Easton Events, you might start on Tuesday doing the initial load in for that Saturday wedding. And in the wedding timeline, you click on the 3 dots to add a new day. You define your setup items all the way up until wedding day. Same thing for rehearsal dinner. And then in the project timeline, you can see how all those days and events overlap and where your teams are. So the last piece that really makes timelines sing is that sequence feature. So I'd like to showcase, if I skip to, for example, The way sequences work is I can click the sequence column to link items together. And once they're linked, it allows you to change one item, and all the items that are linked to it will also shift. So you can make robust changes on the fly and export and share that new information with vendors and clients on day of, or right when you're on a call with them without too much work. So I'm going to skip to a sequence that we've already built in here. Easton Events might have a sequence in the morning for hair and makeup into photos. You might have a ceremony sequence and then a run of show sequence for dinner, which I'll show you now. And you can see if I go to my wedding date, here's my wedding run of show sequence. All of these items have been tagged. I can click to edit my sequence once I've connected those items. And then you can easily drag and drop items. If the groom's brother wants to give a toast before the canapes go out or after, you can simply drag and drop an item and it will absorb the times and change everything below it. Or if you need to change a duration and say, hey, cocktails are actually going to take an hour and 10 minutes. When I press enter, all the times below that will shift automatically. I can save my sequence. And now all of my timeline items are up to date with just a click of a button or two. So that is really a high level overview of the timelines and the beauty behind them. And I'd like to jump into budgets now, and you'll see just how similar the features and the pages look and feel. So you can either navigate on this left-hand bar into an event budget, or you can use this navigation menu here. These are exactly the same. I'm going to go into a new project that I have built out specifically for budgets. And this is in that larger event or the larger project for Aspen, where I have multiple events built out. I'm going down into my wedding budget, and I just want to showcase some of the cool features in budgets. So very similarly to timelines, you have your filters, you have your export options, you have the three dots for your advanced features, like saving your entire budget as a template or loading an existing template you have to create a new budget. Some of the unique features about budgets are these additional options you have. So budget setup allows you to create a target amount for each category. And once you set your target amounts in budget setup, eventPERCH will track how far over under each category is and give you a sense when you're working with your clients whether you have wiggle room in any given category. So definitely check out budget setup. And also under categories, again, these we defined in settings under customization originally. So make sure to build those out before you really dive into budgets. Once your categories are built, you can click this menu item in order to choose for each event or for each project which categories you actually want to use, what order those categories should be in. You can hide and unhide different categories, and you can apply that to all events in this project or just to the event that you're working in. So check out those options. And just to show some of the output of our budgets, for example, if we filter here for we want to schedule or we want to check our budget against the invoices for the vendor, I can come in and say, just give me all budget items assigned to the country club as the vendor. And I'm going to export. I can say country club budget for the wedding. I can choose some of these additional options if I want to show all the details of taxes and fees. I can check show markups, or I can leave those collapsed for the menus and things. You can show notes or not show notes, and you can also select which columns that you'd like to view in that export. And voila, you get a beautiful budget. Again, this is a very simple budget for catering so far. I can show some of the more detail. This is an example of really easily being able to match up your invoices with a filtered budget in eventPERCH. So for each budget, whether you filter it for an individual vendor or you export an entire budget with all of your vendors, you'll get a recap in that PDF export of the summary for each category that you have, and at the bottom you'll have a rolling total of what has been paid and due, what's owed to your vendors, and what's owed to you as the planning company. So that is the beauty behind our budget exports. And then some of the cool features that are unique about budgets in eventPERCH are what we call, for example, markups and sub items. So you do have the option to add in a single item like floral and decor, or even you could say your F&B menu is 1 times $20,000 for all the food and beverage, or you can break that down into a menu and you can detail out, for the quantity of people, how much each menu item costs, and then add in your beverage, for example. You can build out your taxes for each individual item and also apply service fees and gratuities. And these will automatically calculate as your guest count changes, as your pricing changes. All of your numbers are staying in check without the work of manually double checking the spreadsheets, or as Lynn said, forgetting an item and missing an item that's tied to your management fee. So use the fee column here to define what gets your management fee and what doesn't, or what might be a reimbursement for your planning company or not. And in this example, we chose not to take our management fee on the liquor tax and on the service fees, but you have that option at your fingertips here. And you can see, so to build out sub items and markups, you just click the 3 dots on an item and you can add a sub item menu, which creates this little collapsible menu where you can build out line items that sum into a total. And then markups are where you can add your taxes and fees and automatic calculations. You can then choose to export that with the full detail. So I will say show markups and sub items. And when I export that, I get a breakdown that I can share with my client or my vendor, or make sure that lines up with the invoice I'm being provided. So that's the beauty behind budgets. And I just want to quickly touch on the vendor payouts and really the connection between budgets and payouts. So minor cool items that we'll show you in a moment are just all the ways that eventPERCH makes sure that you don't leave money on the table. So one of the things is this little red coloring on this vendor. This is telling me that I have a sub item menu here, and one of the items inside of it is not tagged to a vendor. So this item is not tagged to the country club. I forgot to do that. So let me come in and tag that to country club. And now that little red alert goes away for the vendor. There's a lot of examples of that in vendor payouts, which I'll show you in just a moment. Your payment group column in the budget is what connects each of your budget line items to your vendor payment schedules and those invoices. So just like you do with sequences, you can click on the little bubble inside the payment group and you can type in a new payment group, which whatever name that you choose, you can say this is invoice number 1001, and you can create that basically a link, and you're linking those budget items together. So we've created this invoice for the catering invoice for the country club company. We've linked all of these items into an invoice together. And now when I go to my vendor payout, the vendor payout is where you can see first is a summary of all of your invoices that you've assigned in the payment groups in the budget. So if I go to my country club, I can see that CC invoice that I linked those budget items to, and all the budget items I linked total up to 229,000 and change. And then I can click into each of these invoices, and that's where I schedule the individual payment installments and when payments are due based on the installment schedule for that vendor. So I do want to keep, we could talk for days about payment schedules, but really focusing on some of the high level benefits. You can see here, eventPERCH will highlight when something is overdue based on the payment schedule you've defined. So if this payment was overdue, maybe I forgot to mark it as paid. It was due 2 days ago. And actually, when I look in my notes, that item was paid. So I can come into this invoice and I can mark the paid date and say that actually was paid on the 15th. And now when I go back to my vendor payout summary, it says that that band invoice is completed and there's no payment due. Some additional alerts you have are like unassigned budget items. So this is saying for this vendor, the country club, there's a budget item that's assigned to that vendor, but it doesn't have an invoice yet. And so eventPERCH doesn't know where to put that budget item. So I can go back to my budget. I can use my handy filters and I could say vendor equals country club. Show me all the country club items. This one's tagged. Here it is. So here's that $800 for golf carts that I forgot to put into an invoice for payment. I can now say, maybe that is a separate invoice, and I could say transport invoice, and I can click create. Now that that item is tagged, when I go back to my vendor payout, I can see under the country club, there's this new invoice. I can now click into that invoice to assign the installments. And now my unassigned budgets have gone down to 0. So I know when everything's green, I'm feeling good and all of my budget items are being accounted for. So that's really the beauty behind the payment schedules. And when you export payment schedules, you get this is an unfiltered view. You'll get a breakdown for every vendor, all the invoices that that vendor has assigned to them, and then all the installments inside of those invoices and what's due in total for each vendor. And then at the bottom, you'll have a summary for the entire event of what's due to all vendors and what's been paid. Additionally, you can use the filters to say, let's filter for, let's say, any installments that are coming up due after July 1st. When I click that, I quickly get a filtered view and I can see that Country Club has an invoice due in September, in July, in October. And then you can export for your client of just the upcoming payments that are due and outstanding, for example. So that is some of the beauty behind payment schedules. And we would love to dive into those features further on one of our office hours calls. And then really, one of the only other items that I didn't mention is those templates, which are a huge time saver feature, which I'll show you in just a moment. Make sure to check out all of those individual buckets and also check out the summaries at the bottom of your payment schedule and budget. This gives you a sense of high level, what are your total management fees based on what you plugged into your project overview for each event as 20% or a flat fee or a minimum. eventPERCH will do all the math for you based on which budget items you assign to a management fee and calculate them at the bottom. And you can keep a running check on your total event budget, or you can jump over to the project level and see a summary of the budget for every event that you have and your total management fees across all events, and filter and export away. So that is the beauty behind some of our advanced tools. And then real quick on the templates, if I am in a budget, I can save any one of my budgets or timelines as a template using the 3 dots, or in my project overview, I can, if I have a whole project with all 7 of these events that I love, I can save that entire project as a template. I can name that, template for Aspen, Colorado, or template for this particular venue. And when I save that as a template, it goes into my template database. And then I can, when I'm creating a new project, and let's say I'm going back to Aspen, Colorado, I can click load template and I can select my particular saved project template. eventPERCH will load that template from scratch and then allow you to find and replace. Just for loading's sake, I'm going to load in an individual timeline or budget so that we don't have to load in all 10 events at one time. But let's say I'm in my wedding timeline, and I haven't built a timeline yet, but it's a recurring event. I'll load that template. I'll go to my wedding template. I'll click populate. Let me just refresh here. Apologies for the loading delay. And you can see it will take my wedding template for my timeline, It'll take a moment to load. And once that loads in, we have a find and replace feature where you can search for any vendor, any description name, any location. You can quickly sort through where all those vendors live throughout that template timeline. And then you can use the replace feature to maybe swap out a vendor or swap out a location in real time. And in a matter of minutes, once you have your templates built out, you can produce new projects and new events on the fly. So here's my timeline that just loaded successfully. It's again, a 6-day setup for this wedding timeline. It populated that in just minutes for this venue that I'm going back to. And now I can say, find and replace. I want to take CBI, which is my Chatham Bars Inn vendor, and I want to replace the Chatham Bars Inn with another venue that I have in here. So let's say I'm replacing that with a signature welcome and saying either replace each instance, and it will quickly replace those with the new vendor, or I can say replace all and replace with that new vendor I have on the event. So that is some of the high level of eventPERCH, and I would love to catch up with you all in the next office hours and really dive into the details. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Ryder. That's great. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. So let me pull up. So if you scan this QR code, that is how you get to the trial. If that's an easy way to do it, there's no commitment. Oh, I didn't share. Wait a second. Hold on. Let me share. There we go. I didn't share.
I'll do it for you.
Hold on. There we go. Whoa, no.
Why isn't there? We go.
Yeah. That's really bad.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
There we go.
All right. All right. But we'd obviously love to have you on board. I really, hand on my heart, can tell you that this thing is game changing, that you will never look so good. What we have found is that it is a new way of kind of thinking about this information. But so anyone who has ever worked with Easton, which we have lots of wonderful young people who go off and do fly and do their own thing. Every single one of them says, I cannot work without eventPERCH. Like that's how critical this thing is. So we couldn't be more excited about being able to launch this. No pun intended. So join us. So trial, and Lisa, I think if you want to, you can speak to Ryder and he'll get you back in if you want to retrial again, no problem. And then you can join us for office hours next week, and we'll just work. So when you got to start, you got to remove the Band-Aid. You got to start
with one project.
Start with one project, and then use Pip, because Pip is so nice and kind. It's like Claude.
Lots of explanation
Really,
points.
it does really. And if Pip doesn't know, it goes to the team who will step in and help you. So you really, I feel like, as much as it's always daunting to start, once you do, I think you'll be really happy that you did. So anyway, we hope to see you, Eden and Lisa, on the other side. And until next office hours. All right, everybody. Nice to see you. Bye.